You're listening to the Mind Over Murder podcast.
My name is Bill Thomas. I'm a writer, consulting producer, and now podcaster. I am now trying to use my experience as the brother of a murder victim to help other victims of violent crime. I'm working on a book on the unsolved Colonial Parkway Murders, and I'm the co-administrator of the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook group, together with Kristin Dilley.
My name is Kristin Dilley. I'm a writer, a researcher, a teacher, and a victims advocate, as well as the social media manager and co-administrator for the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook page with my partner in crime, Bill Thomas. Welcome to Mind Over Murder. I'm Kristin Dilley.
And I'm Bill Thomas.
And we're back with continuing coverage of the Idaho 4 case. And today we are taking a look at the search warrant for Bryan Kohberger's residence. I don't know about you, but I have not very often had a chance to look in great detail at the contents of a search warrant. And so this was very interesting for me to be able to break apart. Is that the same experience you had on your end?
Yeah, there's been some reference to search warrants in the Colonial Parkway murders, but I've never actually laid my hands on the documents. I don't think we're likely to either, quite frankly. I would dearly love to, and I hope to at some point. I've seen some search warrants before. This is an interesting document, to put it mildly.
So we'll go ahead and do exactly what we did last time with the probable cause affidavit. I'll read the document and we'll both take some time to do some color commentary. We do hope that this is helpful to all of our listeners who may not be as familiar with the ins and outs of the criminal justice system. And maybe you're looking at these kind of documents and going, I have no idea how to wade through this. Let us wade through it for you.
The good news is we're both civilians and we try to speak using civilian type language.
Yeah.
And we'll try to do that again in this discussion. This is an interesting case. I think it's going to be many months. Looks like summer 2023 before the next significant hearing. And then from what I read this morning, it sounds like a trial might not be likely until late summer 2023. So we probably have some time. One interesting development that has happened in the last couple of weeks is that some of these documents have been sealed, and the officers of the court, which include lawyers for both sides and a number of other players, have been gagged and ordered not to speak about this case, which is actually extremely unusual in that particularly defense attorneys will often speak out in favor of their clients or their client's position, whereas prosecutors don't speak out quite nearly as much. It's interesting that the judges decided to take that step in this case. We're not gagged, so we're going to continue to comment as we see fit.
Exactly. And we will put a link in our show notes to this particular search warrant. This is not something that we obtained illegal. This is openly available to anybody who wants to read it. We're just hoping that we can cut through some of the red tape for those of you who don't have time to wade through 49 pages. So we'll go ahead and get started here. And this search warrant is addressed to any peace officer in the state of Washington. Upon the sworn complaint made before me, there is probable cause to believe that the crimes of murder in the first degree and burglary per Idaho code has been committed in Idaho, and that evidence of those crimes or contraband, the fruits of crime, or things otherwise criminally possessed, or weapons or other things by means of which crime has been committed or reasonably appears about to be committed, is concealed in or on certain premises. As an English teacher, I hated that sentence, but here we go.
The key thing is that we're moving over into the state of Washington, which adjoins Idaho. Kohberger, the identified suspect, lives and works at the University of Washington. So we cross over the border, and these orders then are from Idaho, where they allege the murders took place, to the state of Washington, which is we're only talking about less than 10 miles apart, these two locations. But we're going from one state to the other.
Okay, so we have, in making this determination, this court did not consider the information in the supplemental disclosure re-DNA test as evidence supporting the existence of probable cause. Bill, Do you want to explain what that means?
What they're saying is that there was an additional DNA test of some sort, and they've provided supplemental disclosure. Remember, we read the documents from a couple of weeks ago, and there was only one reference in that charging document, which was the test that was conducted on the trash at Kohberger's family home in Pennsylvania. Now here they're referencing a supplemental disclosure regarding a DNA test, and they're saying that this is not regarded, perhaps they mean at this point, as supporting the existence of probable cause. So I think there'll be a reference to this later. Maybe we may have to wait until the trial to find out exactly what's meant here. It's very clear that there were additional DNA tests done in this case, which you and I have been saying would be likely for a number of weeks. A number of true crime experts, investigators, and forensics experts, including Cheryl McCollum, have also said they thought it was very likely that additional DNA tests were conducted. Keeping in mind that this crime scene in Idaho, where the 4 victims were killed, is probably incredibly rich in terms of forensic evidence available for testing. And none of that is specifically referenced in the charging document either, the affidavit. So there's a lot more work that's going to be done here, but they reference the fact there is a supplemental disclosure regarding a DNA test and that they are not using this at this point as existence of probable cause.
But they also follow up the next sentence later by saying this court also does not consider the information in the supplemental disclosure to be exculpatory, which means it would exonerate the defendant.
So what they're saying is such a test happened. We're not taking a position, I think the implication is yet.
Yes.
Regarding whether that information shows probable cause. In other words, we're going to be charging this man with multiple murders. Or exculpatory, in other words, we're not going to be charging him for multiple murders. They're just saying it is.
Yes, it exists, and it's not one thing yet or the other thing yet. We haven't decided, which I think that's a pretty good place to leave it on for right now.
The important thing is it happened.
It happened.
And yeah. I've gotten a bit frustrated because of the World Wide Web and all that stuff. I've seen so much thrown around regarding the affidavit about if this is all they have, it's not a very strong case. No one ever said it was all they had. And this clearly references additional tests and evidence which may be presented at trial.
Yes. Okay, continuing the search warrant. You are commanded to search within 10 days of this date the premises described as follows. Apartment located at 1631 Northeast Valley Road, number G201, Pullman, Washington. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is a 3-story multiple occupancy apartment building in Pullman, Washington, which is tan and white in color. Apartment G201 is located on the northeast corner of the second story of this building. The door to G201 is located on the east side of the second story landing and is designated by the numbers 201 on the door. The door is white with a swinging screen door on the outside of the main door to the residence. Seize, if located, evidence of the above listed crimes, including blood or other bodily fluid or human tissue or skin cells or items with blood or other bodily fluid or human tissue or skin cells on the item.
Let's stop there for a second. When you first read this, you think, oh my gosh. But remember, we may be talking about minute amounts of this type of evidence. So they even mention skin cells. We're not necessarily talking about buckets of blood or other evidence. We may be talking about very small amounts, but when you first read it, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, this sounds absolutely horrible. The crime scene could very well contain a great deal of evidence of this type. And from what we've heard from first responders, it was actually quite horrible. But this is now Bryan Kohberger's residence at the University of Washington, 10 miles away. So we're probably talking about small amounts, droplets, trace evidence, that sort of thing.
As a longtime CSI fan, I am familiar with the Lacard exchange principle, which means that you take a little piece of the crime scene with you. Once you leave it, that is what they're looking for.
Exactly.
Okay, 2, knives, sheaths, or other sharp tools, including any dagger, dirk, or sword, or any written indicia of ownership of same, including sales receipts. I'm interested in those very specific types of sharp instruments. So we have knives, dagger, dirk, and sword. Very interesting.
And the sales receipts is also very striking. I think there's been some reporting. I've seen so many articles at this point, it's a little hard to remember them all. I think they even have some idea when the suspect purchased the K-bar type knife.
Okay, they are continuing to indicate the items that they want seized. 3, any images, whether digital or on paper or any other format, which show Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and then we have 2 redacted names here, BI and or DM, and or the house at 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, and or the surrounding neighborhood.
First of all, notice they've shifted over now to alphabetical.
Yep.
Whereas I think that was actually a mistake in the affidavit. The affidavit showed the 4 victims' names in a different order, which I believe is the order they believe that the murders took place. Now they shifted over to alphabetical. And as you mentioned, they're redacting the 2 surviving roommates' names, although they've been reported in the media. And of course, they want any digital or printed copies of any images whatsoever of those 6 individuals and the house that they lived in.
All right, we're continuing along with the C's list. 4, clothing, including but not limited to dark shirt or shirts, dark pants, masks, shoes with diamond pattern sole. If I'm remembering correctly, they had thought the diamond pattern sole was the same pattern that you would have on Vans sneakers, if I'm remembering correctly.
You are. And this, of course, is the articles of clothing that DM, when she peeked out of the doorway into the hall as the suspect made his way past her room, this is what she described him as wearing. Also, clothing, including but not limited to, basically they could seize anything in this apartment. And they might do that because they may be looking for other outfits that might match photographs taken of the car, if there's any chance of him wearing something that was distinctive, or any kind of other article of clothing they think may have evidence on it. They could take his entire closet if they wanted to.
Okay, back to the C's list. 5, trace evidence, including DNA from blood or skin cells or other source, footprints, fingerprints, hair, whether human or animal/dog.
So this is a very broad category. And so they'll be spending hours in this location. They also looked at his teaching office at the University of Washington. This is a very long list, and we're talking about typically very small trace amounts of all of this type of evidence. And you'll note the inclusion of the animal/dog because there was a dog on the premises at the location where the murders took place.
Yeah, notice this is a very broad search warrant. They are trying to add any possible thing that might help them with this. Okay, number 6 is really long, so let me parse this bit by bit. For the C's list, 6. Data compilations, whether digital, electronic, or on paper or other format, showing an interest in or planning of murder, violent assault, stabbing and or cutting of people, and data compilations showing details of the 1122 King Road house, its location, and or any information about Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, BF, and or DM, and data compilation showing the location of Bryan Kohberger or the cell phone with number 509-592-8458 on November 13th, 2022, including Wi-Fi logs and data or metadata associated with photos, social media posts, or applications on cell phones or computer towers, laptops, and tablets. As example, but not intended to be an inclusive list of data compilations being sought, ledgers, papers, lists, books, notes, letters, calendars, address books, contact lists, diaries, tapes, photographs, videos, emails, text messages, social media posts, messages, and metadata associated therewith.
This is quite something. This is number 6. This is basically give me everything that's out there that's possible in any format whatsoever that's going to show this suspect doing research or planning a violent attack of this sort. This, remember, is how the Anna Walsh case has been moved forward in Boston. They have been able to go through the husband's search records and are finding all sorts of things which are pretty highly incriminating. Unless you're researching a case or writing a true crime book or whatever, most of us are not researching things like Bryan Walsh was researching. They're looking for similar things here that might involve any kind of planning or advanced steps taken towards committing a murder of this type. And then, of course, anything to do with any interest in these 6 young people, 5 of whom lived in the home, and of course 4 of whom were murdered on November 13th. And then, of course, metadata. So they're looking for basically everything, digital and hard copy, and just about any stop in between that could tie this suspect into these locations, these individuals, and these murders.
And then in case that wasn't enough, number 7 gets even more specific about the electronic information that they are looking for. Number 7 has 6 bullet points to go along with it.
Yeah, so these are incredibly detailed. And as Mac was telling us when we interviewed her a week ago, these search warrants are designed to be as inclusive as possible. She told us the story about making a mistake many years ago and not realizing that the search warrant didn't extend to the garage of the location that they were searching. And Nancy Grace, who was the prosecutor at the time, stopped them and said, no, you got to go get another search warrant for the garage. You should have included that in the original documents. They had not. Nancy Grace stopped them. They went and got the secondary document. You know, a judge is going to approve this. He knows that they're looking at a serious crime. These are very broadly written in this example to avoid those kind of mistakes. So they're basically saying, we'll take everything you've got, especially anything that's going to lead us to link this suspect with this location and these 4 individuals.
Okay, back to the list. This is number 7. So we start with electronic digital devices or digital storage devices, which may contain any of the above data compilations, including cell phones, computer towers, laptops, tablets, external hard drives, CD, DVD, thumb drive, or other data storage devices. This includes any device which may contain, and here come our bullet points, evidence of other accounts associated with this device, including email addresses, social media accounts, messaging app accounts, and other accounts that may be accessed through the digital device that will aid in determining the possessor user of the device. Photographs, images, videos, documents, and related data created, accessed, read, modified, received, stored, sent, moved, deleted, or otherwise manipulated between the above dates. Evidence of use of the device to conduct internet searches relating to a review of other murders or violent assaults, stabbing, and or cutting of people, as well as how to avoid detection after the commission of such crimes. Details of the 1122 King Road house, its location and neighborhood, and or information about one or more of the victims, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogan, BF, and or DM. Information that can be used to calculate the position of the device between the above dates, including location data, GPS satellite data, GPS coordinates for routes and destination queries between the above listed dates, app data or usage information and related location information, IP logs or similar internet connection information, and images created, accessed, or modified between the above listed dates, together with their metadata and EXIF tags. evidence of the identity of the person in possession of the device on or about any times that items of evidentiary value located pursuant to this warrant were created, modified, accessed, or otherwise manipulated. Such evidence may be found in digital communications, photos, and video and associated metadata, IP logs, documents, social media activity, and similar data. Also, just for good measure, passwords, phrases, codes, patterns, fingerprints, and or usernames to operate any such devices.
They don't want to get locked into a situation where they're going through everything this guy has electronically and then hit some sort of wall with a password problem. And remember, the FBI and Apple in particular have a history here, which is not 100% good, where there's been conflict in terms of providing information like this from Apple to the FBI. I think they've been able to work that out. I think in a situation like this where we have a horrific quadruple homicide and certainly strongly written warrants like this approved by judges, I think that they will likely be given access to all of his devices. They are absolutely trying to button this up so that they can take a look at every single item that this suspect has and all of the interaction between those devices. You're listening to Mind Over Murder. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. We're back here at Mind Over Murder.
And then finally, the last item on the C's list for the search warrant is 8. Indicia of residence in or ownership or possession of the premises and any of the above items, including mail, receipts, identification, bills, rental agreements, licensing documents, and other personal property whose owner possessor may be readily determined.
This would also give them anything he spent money on, whether he spent money via credit card, check, cash, or what have you. They want to know everything he has spent money on and where all of his available cash and other forms of currency are going.
Now, to wrap up the search warrant, we have a couple of more statements here. Assistance from any law enforcement agencies from the state of Idaho or the federal government or any technical specialists associated with or employed by or contracted with such law enforcement agencies, including but not limited to the Moscow Police Department, Idaho State Police, FBI, Idaho State Police Forensic Services, is authorized. So basically, you can use anybody that you need to get this done.
And then if you wanted to see a comprehensive list of who's working this case so far, there you have it. Moscow Police Department, the Idaho State Police, the FBI, the Idaho State Police Forensic Services Lab are all working on this together now in concert with the authorities on the Washington side of the border.
It also adds assistance from a technical specialist is also authorized to review any digital devices and digital media for the best and least intrusive method of securing digital evidence that the warrant authorizes for seizure and to assist in securing such evidence. So you can also bring in technical specialists to help you do this.
Correct.
Promptly return this warrant to me or the clerk of this court. The return must include an inventory of all properties seized. And then you have the rest of the legal stuff about who keeps a copy of the warrant, and then it is signed off by a superior court judge. It's also important to note that there is a duplicate document for Bryan Kohberger's office at Washington State University, so that if he was doing any of this on, say, work laptop, I don't know who would be so incredibly stupid as to look up how to murder somebody on your work laptop, but I'm sure there are people out there who have done it. That way, this allows them to look at any of his work-related laptop and cell phone data as well.
And then we turn to at least a preliminary list of the items that were seized on the 30th of December, 2022.
Yeah, this is very interesting. So for anybody who happens to have this document pulled up at home, we're looking at page 48 here. And unfortunately, this does not go into nearly as much detail as all of the information that I just read exhaustively. But there are 12 items and 3 additional bullet points here. So we'll go through each one and do a little bit of speculation, shall we? Okay, so these were the items that were seized, and it says all seized from residents and currently stored at WSU PD. So it's with the Washington State Police. Okay, item 1 nitrite type black glove. Item 2, 1 Walmart receipt with 1 Dickies tag. Now, I'm not down with male clothing brands. What are Dickies?
Dickies are a affordable brand of work clothing.
Okay.
They make khakis and work shirts and similar fabrics, a variety of fabrics. This is probably tying into the dark clothing that they were looking for. They don't say what color or anything like that, but the Dickies are available in a wide variety of colors. Think khaki, dark brown, black, dark blue. And they'd be the kind of thing you'd see a worker guy wear in a garage or any number of other kind of blue-collar locations. Okay.
Next, 2 Marshall's receipts. For anybody who doesn't know, Marshall's is a department store here in the U.S. 4, dust container from a Bissell Power Force vacuum.
This is interesting. I think this is his vacuum because the state police labs in that part of the country have MVAC technology. As a matter of fact, the state of Idaho has used MVAC, the company run by our friend Jared Bradley, which has been so successful in breaking cases. They have these very sophisticated evidence extraction tools, which are basically a very fancy lab-grade vacuum cleaner. This vacuum cleaner actually sounds like his personal vacuum. And when we come to some other evidence further down the list, I'll point out where I think, and that could be very helpful to the lab techs.
Yeah. Okay, next. Item 5 is 8 possible hair strands.
I think they're breaking these down. I think there are dozens and dozens of hair strands, as you'll see as we go through the list. I think they're mentioning these sort of in the order of discovery. And you've also got multiple forensic lab technicians working the rooms slowly and carefully. And so if they make a discovery of 8 possible hair strands, they're going to bag those and tag those, as they would say.
Bag it and tag it. Yep. I'm seeing CSI run in my head as I'm going down this list.
Yeah, think CSI. So that's why I think they're breaking these down into smaller numbers, because you could have certainly totaled up the number of hairs and just found 17 or 100 hairs or whatever. But I think they're doing this in the order that they're being found. And somebody is probably keeping like a clipboard or an electronic log. As people find things, they're saying, I got something here.
1 Fire TV stick with cord and plug. I'll admit, this should tell you something about exactly how little time I have to watch TV. I have a Fire TV, but I watch it so seldom. It's maybe once or twice a month that I can actually get out there to the living room and turn it on. I don't know what kind of data you would get from the Fire TV. I wouldn't even know how to find the stick that's running my Fire TV. I don't know.
Obviously, our friends at Moscow PD, the Idaho State Police, the Idaho State Police Lab, and the FBI do know, and I think you'd be surprised. All of these devices are tracking our use to a much greater extent than we realize. So this is interesting. They mentioned the Fire TV because that's probably not included in the list of other types of devices that they said they were specifically looking for. Obviously, as they're going through his home very carefully, they're looking for certain things. They're going to take his cell phone, his pad or other device, they specifically mention his computer tower. They're going to take every kind of computer, and remember, a phone is also a computer in addition to being a radio, as we've talked about before. But this Fire TV thing, I think they decided, you know something? Hold on. That's going to have search history in it as well. Take it. So when in doubt, they're going to include it in the list, and they're going to show it to the court, and they're going to make sure that this is approved so that there isn't a problem down the road.
I imagine, too, that if he's been sitting there watching How to Get Away with Murder documentaries every night, they'll be able to see that as well, too.
Yes. And as I was saying to you a moment ago, I think you'd be shocked how much data all of these devices, including the Fire TV, we have one as well, how much information they retain.
I could definitely be judged on the amount of Criminal Minds that I'm watching based on the number of times I turn it on my Fire TV. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you could.
Damn it. All right. Next, we have one possible animal hair strand. Numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11 are all one possible hair.
And I think these are being listed separately in the inventory because they're found at different places in different locations. There's probably a much more detailed list, which ties into the hundreds of photographs they would have taken. As they go through this, they would be saying where all of these individual pieces of evidence were found. But that's why I think they're listed separately.
One thing I've noticed, you've got 3 points that say possible hair strands, and then you've got 1, 2, 3 that just say one possible hair. Why do some of them say hair and others of them say hair strands? That's what I'm curious about.
Length, maybe?
Maybe that's a Mac question, I think.
Yeah, we might want to ask her that. I'm going to go with length, and Kohberger's hair appears to be relatively short in the photographs we've seen of him.
Yeah.
If there were longer hairs, which might cause you to use the word strand, that might lend you towards thinking this came from a person with longer hair, could be male or female.
Yeah.
But additional testing would likely provide that information.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'll still follow up with Mac and see if she'll confirm or deny.
It's a good question.
One computer tower. That's item 12. And then we have an A, B, and a C. A, one collection of dark red spot collected without testing.
I think what they mean is no testing conducted at the location.
Like at the scene, yeah.
Because they're saying without testing, they're going to test it. But I think what they're saying is we collected this and we're going to bring it back to the lab and do further analysis.
B, 2 cuttings from uncased pillow of reddish brown stain, larger stain tested.
This seems to be, they're making a distinction between what's been tested and what hasn't been tested. And again, I know the state of Idaho has used the MBAC system with great success. I would imagine this evidence will be going to the Idaho State Lab where they have MBAC, and they'll likely be testing everything, large stains, small stains. All what they're indicating is at this point, I think, is the larger stain has been tested, but indicated what happened with any other stains.
And we've also got the color differential. A says dark red, B says reddish brown. And then finally C, 2 top and bottom of mattress cover packaged separately, both labeled C, multiple stains, 1 tested.
I think they're looking for transfer here, potential items. And as you were talking about, it is virtually impossible for someone to brutally stab 4 individuals without significant transfer of blood and other evidence onto his person. So if he makes his way home, takes off his clothes, takes a shower, maybe discards his clothes, there are still opportunities for transfer there. Many opportunities, I think. And I think that's what they're looking for here.
Very interesting list. And I'm sure that there are people who are like, wait, that's it?
See, and I would say, no, that's not it.
That's not it now.
They're providing a list that's as of a certain time. This warrant was approved by the Superior Court in Whitman County, Washington on December 29th. It was served on December 30th. They've been working this evidence hard in the lab for what now? Almost 3 weeks? All they're saying is this is the preliminary list of what we've found. This is an inventory. It doesn't say anything about results. It doesn't say anything else about information as gleaned from this evidence. From what we've heard and read, it doesn't sound like they found much in his university office, although a similar search warrant was executed there.
I'm guessing that probably a lot of what they're going to find is going to be digital evidence as opposed to the physical that they found. This is very interesting.
One other thing I'd like to return to for a moment, Kristin, is this discussion about the Mad Greek restaurant.
Yeah.
I think it is still entirely possible, and I'm not the only person that said this, that it's possible that given the fact that two of the victims worked at the Mad Greek restaurant, and we know that Kohberger purports to be a vegan, and that if you search for good vegan food in Moscow, Idaho, the Mad Greek is the first thing that comes up in an internet search. The owner of the Mad Greek restaurant can insist all he wants that Kohberger never went there. Quite frankly, he has no way of knowing that. I waited tables a million years ago, and as people pointed out, unless someone was a regular or was incredibly disruptive or otherwise did something to bring attention to themselves, hundreds of other people go through a restaurant each week. Yeah. And you may be perfectly pleasant and have a nice interaction with them. Hopefully they have a good meal, they leave a good tip, they're on their way. You're not going to remember. The other thing is that, with no disrespect to the owner of the Mad Greek restaurant, I can understand why the Mad Greek restaurant doesn't want to be associated with a horrible quadruple murder.
Sure.
So, of course, he's going to say this never happened. But People magazine, which may have had its origins in a bit more tabloid style a million years ago when the magazine was established.
Yeah, I was saying we both remember what People used to be.
But they've actually turned out to be a credible news source. They don't print salacious gossip. Yes, it's got an interest in true crime and celebrity news and that sort of thing. But it is not a publication that just prints garbage.
Yeah.
And People magazine made a point of circling back around and saying, we stand by our reporting that Kohberger had gone to the Mad Greek restaurant. Now, it'll come out if it's important at trial. I think it could actually be important, and I am still willing to bet that Kohberger had a meal there on more than one occasion, and it may be the place where these two young women first moved onto his radar, or a place where he realized they worked and he sought them out in one way or another. Whether he directly interacted with them, I have no way of knowing. And whether the owner of the restaurant and staff who worked there would ever remember one person out of the hundreds per week and thousands per year that would go through there in a busy university town. I think that's a real stretch. People magazine says they stand by their reporting. And I think they're actually reporting something that's accurate, which is that Kohberger did go to that restaurant. It's not that big a town, and there aren't going to be dozens of choices for good vegan food. I would not be surprised if this somehow ties back in to his potential, I'll use the word obsession, with these two young women.
No, I agree with your supposition there. And I think that is just something that we are going to have to wait until time to go to trial to figure out. That is the police said at their initial press conference. I still think that there is a lot of information to come in this case. And so we'll just have to be patient. And as developments continue to unfold, we will, of course, keep reporting them here. That's going to do it for this bit of coverage on the Idaho 4 case. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion of the search warrant and the information obtained from said search warrant. We will continue to update you as developments unfold. Thank you for listening to Mind Over Murder. We'll see you next time.
Mind Over Murder is a production of Absolute Zero and Another Dog Productions.
Our executive producers are Bill Thomas and Kristin Dilley.
Our logo art is by Pamela Arnois.
Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod.
Mind Over Murder is distributed in partnership with Crawl Space Media.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
You can also follow our page on the Colonial Parkway Murders on Facebook.
And finally, you can follow Bill Thomas on Twitter at BillThomas56.
Thank you for listening to Mind Over Murder.